Welcome to What the F Happened, Fraud and Financial Crime Deconstructed, a Defend podcast where we break down what's actually happening across fraud, scams, AML, and financial crime.
Each episode cuts through the noise to explain the tactics, trends, and real-world impact behind the headlines, so you're better prepared for what comes next. Let's get into it. So, imagine you are a bouncer at a really busy nightclub. You spot a guy who started a fight last week, you memorize his face, and you just permanently ban him from the premises.
Right.
But step into the world of generative AI and financial crime, and that bouncer is just completely outmatched. I mean, the bad guy isn't just putting on a fake mustache or a new hat.
No, not at all.
He is showing up with a flawless, biologically accurate new face, a newly generated voice, and a completely pristine background. And he does this every single time he walks up to the door.
Which is terrifying, honestly.
It is. And welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring a report called the Polymorphic Fraud Playbook, published by DataVisor.
Yeah, and the reality hidden in these pages is that Gen AI didn't actually invent new categories of financial crime. I mean, it didn't invent bank robbery or wire fraud.
Right, the crimes are the same, but it did something far more dangerous. It completely broke the economics of those old crimes.
Exactly. We are so used to catching bad actors because they reuse things. They reuse the same fake IDs, the same scripts, the same IP addresses.
Because fakes used to be expensive to make. But we really have to ask, what happens when the cost of creating a brand new perfect fake drops to absolute zero?
Well, that is the new baseline. And to be clear to you listening, we are not discussing some theoretical whiteboard problem that might happen in 5 years. This is active in the wild today.
Which is why this playbook is so important. It's designed to equip you to understand and actively defend against attacks that literally never look the same twice.
But before we can even begin to formulate a defense, we kind of have to look at the architecture of traditional security and understand why it's currently failing, and failing so quietly.
Yeah, let's unpack that. It really comes down to the death of repetition. For 20 years, nearly every fraud control deployed in production, your blocklists, your signature matching,
Reputation scoring, all of it.
right, all of it relied on the assumption that producing a convincing attack variation was expensive.
Yeah, if a fraudster spent significant time and money to create a really good forged passport template, they were going to squeeze every single dollar out of it by using it hundreds of times.
Because making a second distinct fake cost almost as much as the first. So our defenses were built to observe an attack, memorize its signature, and block that exact signature the next time it appeared.
But generative models completely vaporize that cost structure. I mean, the marginal cost of generating the next unique identity is now effectively zero. Rationally, an attacker has absolutely no economic incentive to reuse anything.
Okay, a helpful way to visualize this. It's like a massive bank vault designed to recognize and neutralize specific lockpicks. The vault has a perfect memory of every lockpick ever used against it.
Sounds pretty secure.
Right, but suddenly the bank robbers set up a 3D printer right outside the vault, and it instantly prints a brand new, unique, fully functional key for every single attempt.
So your exhaustive million-dollar lockpick database is instantly worthless?
Exactly. And what makes this so terrifying for organizations is that the failure is completely silent. A fraud team can look at their dashboards on a Tuesday morning and just see a sea of green.
Yeah, because their metrics measure performance against the attacks this system can actually recognize. This is a huge trap. When data scientists talk about a model's precision and recall remaining stable, they just mean it's catching known threats perfectly.
It's getting an A+ on grading yesterday's test.
Right. The dashboard looks flawless, but the net fraud loss, the actual money walking out the door, just keeps climbing.
Because the rules written last month decay instantly. They describe one single variant of an attack, and the attacker is already on variant 2 million.
And the playbook notes that these unexplained losses suddenly start concentrating in first-time entities. It's accounts and devices with zero prior history.
So you have no historical data to score them against. And the investigation teams only find the massive coordinated ring in the postmortem long after the money is gone.
Yeah. So since the metaphorical keys are regenerating on every attempt, we really have to examine what these constantly mutating attacks look like in practice.
The cybersecurity industry actually dealt with a very similar crisis decades ago, right?
It did, yeah, with something called polymorphic malware. This was malicious software that would rewrite its own code signature on every single infection.
Which made traditional antivirus software completely blind.
Exactly. It preserved its underlying destructive function, but completely changed its surface appearance.
So, polymorphic financial crime is that exact concept applied to fraud. The underlying intent, the theft, remains totally stable, but the artifacts presented at the door regenerate every time.
And to understand how pervasive this is, we can trace the life cycle of an attack using the 5 forms outlined in the source material.
Let's do it. Imagine a fraud ring wants to extract millions in fraudulent personal loans. They don't buy a stolen driver's license off the dark web anymore.
No, they start with form number 2, synthetic identities. They use generative models to assemble an entirely fictional identity.
Let's call him John Doe 2.0. John has a consistent credit history, a realistic background, but he simply does not exist.
Right. And when John Doe 2.0 tries to open a bank account, the bank demands a live selfie to prove he's a real human. This is form number 1, deepfaked identity and liveness bypass.
So the attackers generate a synthetic face, they clone a voice, and they feed a pristine video stream directly into the bank's camera interface.
And because every attempt uses a freshly generated face, there's no known image on any block list to flag it.
Wow. Okay, so the account is open, but they need to scale this up. They can't manually type out 1,000 loan applications.
Right. Which brings us to form number 4, adaptive bots. These are automated agents that mimic human typing speeds. They solve CAPTCHAs. They navigate the portal.
But unlike old dumb bots, these agents actively learn, write.
Exactly. If a certain application speed triggers a temporary block, the bot senses that boundary and adjusts its speed mid-campaign just to stay under the radar.
That is wild. Okay, so now the bank's underwriting system asks John Doe 2.0 for proof of income.
Here is form number 5, mutating documents. They use AI to generate W-2s, pay stubs, utility bills. Traditional defenses use image hashing, which looks at the digital fingerprint of a document.
To see if it matches a known forgery template.
Yeah, but Gen AI alters the document so completely that no 2 pixels are the same across thousands of forgeries. The digital fingerprint is always unique.
And if an anomaly somehow triggers a manual review and a bank employee emails John Doe 2.0 for clarification,
the attackers deploy form number 3, machine-written social engineering. A language model instantly crafts a highly personalized, fluent, and emotionally manipulative response.
so there's no bad grammar, no weird formatting for an email filter to catch. It's just flawless communication.
In every single phase of that attack lifecycle, the digital artifact being verified by the institution is radically cheaper to fabricate than it is to verify.
Wait, I mean, if they can generate flawless synthetic identities, perfectly bypass video checks, automate the whole thing with learning bots, and instantly generate documents, aren't we just totally outmatched?
It definitely feels that way.
What is the point of even trying to defend a network against that? It feels like they have absolute superiority.
Well, what's fascinating here is they do have superiority, but only if you look at the artifacts. Attackers actually have a massive structural blind spot.
Really? What is it?
Generating a million fake faces is practically free,
Mm-hmm.
but the underlying infrastructure required to monetize those faces is incredibly expensive.
Oh, you mean like the payout paths and the coordination?
Exactly. The coordinated movement of money across thousands of dummy accounts, the specialized network infrastructure they use to hide their location. If they randomized all of that and acted completely independently on every synthetic account, they'd lose the economies of scale that make the fraud profitable.
Ah, I see. Because they still have to move the money out into the real world. They have to funnel the funds from 1,000 small fake accounts into a central location to actually steal it.
Yes. The economic intent and the coordination are highly stable. You can detect the financial logic of the attack.
But to exploit that blind spot, we first have to admit why our current multi-million-dollar security stacks are actively missing that coordination.
Right. The playbook identifies 3 major structural blind spots in our current tech. The first one is a concept called label lag.
Let's talk about that. Supervised machine learning powers most fraud detection today, right?
Yeah, and it's essentially just a matching engine. It requires human beings to provide labeled examples of fraud so it can learn the pattern. You have to explicitly tell the computer, hey, this specific transaction was fraudulent.
But the problem is, you generally don't get that confirmation until a customer disputes a charge, or a loan defaults 60 days later.
Exactly. So by the time that label finally makes its way back into the system and you train the model on it, the attacker retired that specific polymorphic pattern 2 months ago.
The model is highly accurate, but it's answering a question about the past. like predicting yesterday's weather perfectly.
That's a great way to put it. Now, the second fatal mechanism is feature dependence. Security models are built on analyzing features, asking questions about the data.
Like asking, is this IP address reputable? Or has this email been seen on a blacklist?
Right. But when the attacker uses a proxy network to rotate clean IP addresses every 2 seconds and generates infinite new emails, those features instantly degrade to zero information.
And the scary part is the model doesn't crash or throw a warning. It just keeps running, processing the clean IP address and confidently telling the system that everything is totally fine.
Which feeds directly into the third and probably most critical blind spot per channel silos. This is how large organizations are structured, and it is exactly how attackers slip through.
Here is where it gets really interesting, because we are essentially wearing horse blinders. Think about a typical bank. You have the onboarding team handling new accounts. You have the payments team handling money transfers.
And you have the AML team watching for federal violations. They are completely siloed. They only analyze the data directly in front of them.
Right, so our synthetic guy, John Doe 2.0, applies for an account. The onboarding team looks at his flawlessly generated deepfake and unique documents. In isolation, it looks clean, so he's approved.
Then, weeks later, that same synthetic entity initiates a small money transfer. The payments team evaluates it. It's low dollar, domestic, doesn't trip any rules. In isolation, the payments team sees a clean transaction.
The payments team thinks everything is fine. The onboarding team thinks everything is fine. But nobody realizes that John Doe 2.0 is one of 5,000 accounts that were all opened using the exact same underlying device network.
Exactly. And they're all funneling tiny payments into the exact same offshore crypto wallet. The coordination only exists above the channel level.
And no one has a dashboard looking at that altitude. So traditional tools like blocklists offer near zero coverage now.
And supervised ML is permanently hobbled by label lag. The only analytical methods that survive a polymorphic attack are unsupervised machine learning and cross-entity graph analysis.
Purely because they don't depend on having seen the attack before. Okay, so how do we actually operationalize that? How do we stop obsessing over fake artifacts and rebuild our defenses?
The playbook lays out a 5-part defense framework. It starts with detecting without labels using unsupervised machine learning.
Because unsupervised ML doesn't need to be told what fraud looks like beforehand.
Right. It analyzes vast amounts of raw data in real time, actively looking for coordinated anomalies and hidden clusters of behavior that deviate from the normal baseline. It catches the first instance of a new pattern, not the 100th.
Which means we are finally scoring behavior, not artifacts. That's part 2. Instead of scrutinizing the pixels in a passport photo, you analyze device intelligence and behavioral biometrics.
Because a flawless AI-generated fake ID still has to be physically uploaded to the bank server. It has to travel over a specific network, guided by a user with a specific typing cadence.
It's infinitely harder to fake the nuanced network telemetry of 10,000 real human beings than it is to just generate 10,000 fake JPEGs.
Exactly. But analyzing behavior in isolation still leaves you vulnerable to those channel silos. This brings us to part 3, integrating cross-entity graph analysis directly into the real-time decision path.
Which is basically like a digital detective stringboard. It evaluates the complex web of relationships between John Doe, his device, the IP address he shares with 50 other dormant accounts, and where the money ends up.
And you have to map these connections across onboarding, payments, and AML simultaneously.
And this all has to happen incredibly fast, right? If an attacker modifies their script every hour, and it takes an engineering team 3 months to deploy a new rule, the battle is already lost.
That's part 4. You have to compress the adaptation cycle. The playbook suggests leveraging conversational AI agents that allow an analyst to spot a new cluster, ask the system to write a complex rule in plain English, and deploy it in minutes.
Wow, minutes rather than months. And part 5 is automating volume. Machine speed attacks create machine scale alerts. You can't just hire 100 more humans to stare at 1 million new alerts.
You have to automate the initial triage so that preserves human judgment for the really complex edge cases.
So what does this all mean for the sequence? Should a company just pick one of these to start with?
No, sequence is actually critical here. Parts 1 and 2, the unsupervised detection and behavioral scoring, give you the ability to survive novelty. But without part 3, cross-channel linking, unsupervised detection just produces a massive volume of noisy alerts.
You have to connect them. Okay, so the theory is completely solid. But if you're listening to this and realizing your organization is exposed, What do you actually do on Monday morning?
The playbook details a really practical first 90-day plan. In days 1 through 30, your goal is purely to measure the blind spot.
Like figuring out what percentage of loss comes from new entities.
Exactly. And how many days does it take to deploy a new rule? Then, days 31 to 60, you audit feature dependence. You calculate how heavily your models rely on static artifact lookups versus dynamic behavioral signals.
So if your model leans on checking known emails, you instantly know it's structurally fragile, even if the dashboard looks green.
Right. Finally, days 61 to 90, you run a retrospective proof of concept. You take data from a known fraud ring and map it backward across your isolated silos.
You build a string board internally to prove that if the systems had been looking at behavior, the attack would have been stopped on day 1. But wait, why spend 90 days auditing? If the threat is this severe, shouldn't organizations just buy new software immediately?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to acknowledge corporate reality. You can't just walk into a risk committee meeting and demand a massive budget overhaul because Gen AI is scary.
To your point.
You need a defensible business case. This 90-day sequence front-loads the cheapest work, requires no new tech to start, and builds a case using the company's own data.
Rather than just citing scary industry statistics. And DataVisor does have some serious proof points in production, right?
They really do. Their unsupervised ML increases detection coverage by up to 92% against novel attacks. They analyze over 30 billion events daily, taking less than 100 milliseconds to decide at 15,000 queries per second.
100 milliseconds. That speed is the only structural way to fight back against bots, and the operational impact is massive. TaskRabbit reported a 60x increase in operational efficiency after deploying this.
And NASA Federal Credit Union noted that the conversational AI agent transformed their workflow from taking hours down to mere seconds. They are deploying rules in 5 minutes.
It represents a total paradigm shift. So, bringing everything back to you listening, the era of verifying what someone presents at the digital door is just permanently over.
Yeah, it's gone.
The synthetic identities, the cloned voices, the deepfakes, they are going to be flawless, and they will cost the attacker absolutely nothing to generate. The entire future of digital security now rests on verifying how someone behaves.
Which leaves us with a deeply complex, maybe somewhat unsettling question to consider.
What's that?
If AI makes all documents, faces, and voices completely untrustworthy, and our digital defenses must rely entirely on analyzing our behavioral rhythms and network relationships, what does that mean for the future of human privacy?
Oh, wow.
Will our continuous digital behavior become the only true, verifiable fingerprint we have left?
If a 3D printed key is absolutely perfect every single time, the only way the bank actually knows it's me is by constantly monitoring the exact speed, gait, and rhythm of how I walk up to the vault. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take a hard look at your own systems this week, ask those difficult questions about your blind spots, and we will catch you on the next one.
Been listening to What the F Happened? Fraud and Financial Crime Deconstructed, a Defend podcast by DataVisor. If you want to keep learning between episodes, check out Defend Training, a set of self-paced online courses for fraud and financial crime professionals, practical and built around real-world scenarios.
And you can earn CPE credits through the ACFE San Francisco Bay Area chapter. You can find it at datavisor.com/defendtraining. The link's in the description.